Coming up this week in work.
BrewDog announced this week that they are now all about wellbeing, but should we believe them? After years of public scandals and a so-called culture of fear, they are leaning into mental health. But is this rebrand a real culture change or just a PR stunt?
And can a major bank really work like a startup? NatWest COO say that they've ditched top-down planning with small empowered teams. And it seems to be working. Could this be the future of big business?
And in the workplace surgery, do investors care about culture? And if they do, how do you prove it? One listener is gearing up for a funding round and wants to know, will culture make a difference to the investor numbers?
This is Truth, Lies and Work,
the award-winning podcast where behavioural science meets workplace culture. We are brought to you by the HubSpot Podcast Network, the audio destination for business professionals. My name is Leanne and I'm still a chartered occupational psychologist.
My name is Al and I am still a business owner, although a bit fed up of it now, if the truth be told.
In this climate.
Not in
we
these
are
times.
both still helping you create amazing workplace cultures.
We're going to get into today's episode in just a second after a quick break and a message from our lovely sponsors. See you in a second. Welcome back. How's July treating you? What are you on about 7 days into July, 8 days into July? How's it going? Is everything all right? Is it too hot for you? I know that a lot of Europe's on fire. UK is hot and sweaty. It sounds like the US is about the same. So maybe if you're in Canada, I don't know, is Canada cool in summer?
I don't know. Tell us, Canadians.
Yeah. If you're from Canada, then drop us a quick email. Sorry, Canada. Sorry, I'm saying it wrong. Then drop us a quick email. Anyway, this isn't about Canada. This isn't about weather. This is about the news roundup, which is Leanne's favourite time of the week. I've taken the words out of your mouth, haven't I?
It still is my favourite time of the week.
Okay, I've done the jingle. Lee, what have you seen this week?
BrewDog.
Oh, okay, BrewDog. For those people who don't know about BrewDog, they're a UK-based, were the darling of the investment, of the armchair investors about 10, 15 years ago. My dad and my brother-in-law both invest in BrewDog, I believe. Yep, when they first started. Because
that went well, I'm sure.
It did go well, yes, it did. Not shared any of the money with me, but why would they, I suppose? So anyway, so BrewDog, it used to be a scrappy startup brewery, is that right? Yes,
and quite well known for having a problematic culture. But this week it says that it's now all about well-being. So in an article in the Times, fancy, it seems quite on brand, does it? They are trying to shift. In Times, it said that they have been training 200 of their staff as mental health first aiders. Fair play, step in the right direction. But as I mentioned, they have had somewhat of a problematic culture over the years. Let me fill you in. Back in 2021, over 60 ex-employees signed an open letter accusing the company of creating a culture of fear. Bullying, burnout, people being treated like objects, all the really ugly, toxic culture stuff. And it wasn't just one-off incidents. This was a pattern. And it came from a group called Punks with Purpose. And it kind of blew up. If you haven't heard of BrewDog, it is quite a punky brand. That was kind of their kind of thing, wasn't it? So anyway, BrewDog responded at the time with promises. They said they were listening. They rolled out forums, a listening line, and even a dashboard, a nice, shiny, colourful dashboard.
Well, that solves everything, doesn't it?
To show how transparent they were being. But then in 2024, staff were saying none of that worked. A second open letter, because one is bad enough. Second open letter, this time from current staff rather than ex-staff, claimed people were still scared to speak up, that retaliation was happening, that people worried they'd be pushed out if they talked about pay or unions. Oh, and that they've just scrapped the real living wage, and that transparency dashboard, funnily, just went away.
Transparent.
Yeah,
I'm curious, before you go on, they were called the professional punks or something. What were they called, the people before?
Punks with Purpose.
Punks with Purpose. So these were current people. So current, what have they called themselves?
No, this was the first open letter.
Oh,
so this is kind of like ex-workers.
Now it's current
disgruntled,
workers.
Called themselves Punks with Purpose. And
second
now
open letter is from, have they not got a name? Sorry.
BrewDoggers with beef.
BrewDog. I like that. BrewDoggers with beef. Okay, so BrewDoggers with beef. They were saying that it wasn't working.
Yeah.
I interrupted you. Sorry. Go on.
It just wasn't working.
Right, okay.
Yeah, serious issue with psychological safety. Everything they talked about there is what happens when you don't have psychological safety. You're scared to speak up. Retaliation is happening. Worrying that you'll get pushed out. All that type of thing. So this was just last year. So now in 2025, you can imagine my surprise when I saw this article in the Times that BrewDog are leaning into wellbeing. They do have a new CEO, though. The original founders, I believe, have now been pushed out. A new leadership charter and a rebrand that, in terms of its product as well, has also ditched the kind of what they were known for, the shock tactics, the dead animals, I think they used to pour beer into. And yeah, all very strange. But yes, mental health first aiders and talk of wellbeing is now central to their strategy. It's a puff piece. Do you know what I mean? It's all just like, oh, look at us and look at all the amazing things that we're doing. Because let's be honest, I don't believe this is real culture change, because training first aiders is not a culture change make. Because first aiders are brilliant. Mental health first aiders are brilliant. And actually, as an initiative in your organisation, it's probably one of the most impactful things that you can do to support your people and create that psychologically safe environment. Everything, though, that has been claimed by previous employees and current employees points to issues with systems, processes, people, culture, not individual levels of well-being. So the solution for me isn't matching with the problem that employees are speaking up about. The leadership charter, more interesting. That is good. Leadership charters typically map out behaviours we'd expect to see in leadership, and those behaviours may well drive the culture change. But I must admit, I'm not really convinced, Al. What do you think?
Yeah, there's kind of a famous thing in startups saying what got you here won't get you there. And I think that applies to both marketing. So yes, all right, getting dead animals and being all like shock marketing probably did really well when they were a scrappy startup. Now they're an established company, probably 15, 20 years old. That's not going to work. Same. When you're starting up, the temptation is to go, well, culture's great and we're doing our very best and see, look, we're trying, but it's not everything's perfect. Now, it needs to be a bit more formalized. I don't know. I mean, the leader was the founder. I think I've got this right. The founder and his new fiance or new wife were on LinkedIn about 3 months ago going, there is no such thing as work-life balance. You just don't understand. You don't love your work. That showed that they were that they were going down the wrong route, and it's just no massive surprise. Lee, is there a way they can fix this?
I think that they've taken a good step with the leadership charter. I think that's a really positive step. I'm removing problematic founder. I think this is a sad thing for founders, and often where that the innovation that kind of created the initial brand is lost. I agree that it's very noughties, isn't it? All the guerrilla marketing type stuff, and it needed to kind of be updated a little bit with what people are actually interested in now. But I think this is a problem when founders get a bit continue to be too chaotic as the business grows. That's not the energy that a scale up or even at that point a small, medium-sized business needs. And I think often we see that in founders. It's too disruptive, they get pushed out. And ultimately they'll come back in some way because the brand would have lost, like Steve Jobs would have lost its little magic something. But I think it's understanding it as a founder. Am I the best person to be in charge of people and culture of operations? Am I more now stand back a bit, work on, the product development, that side of it? I think it's understanding when, as a founder, you're not the right person to be CEO.
Yeah, and obviously it's not an either or thing. It's not like, oh, right, I can't be in charge of culture, so I have to go and get a chief people officer at 90 grand a year. No, there's fractional people, like Leanne does fractional stuff. So fractional chief people officer, somebody who just does a day a week or even just a day a month or something. Maybe you find someone who is interested in the culture and they can take it as part of their role. Obviously speak to Leanne about that, because you need to make sure you get the right training, get the right person, and you make sure that you do it properly rather than just promoting someone who goes, oh, right, now you're head of culture, and actually what they were doing before was filing. True story. But anyway, yeah. So, cool. BrewDog. Anything else to say on BrewDog?
I think the only thing what I'd be more convinced about this was actually an actual proper intentional culture change is talk of who they're working with to do that. Because I don't mean to be rude, but your average CEO, even your exceptional CEO, is not necessarily going to be an expert in culture change. They're going to be the expert in bringing the right consultants, including organisational psychologists, to do this. So for me at this point, there's not enough there to actually, for me to actually believe it. I think it's a puff piece, and I think we'll see similar complaints later in the year from staff.
Well, talking of change, I read something in a website which I've not written down what the website is, but actually it's part of the PwC. There's the links in the show notes. Part of it, not that you ever go there and look. We know, we check. But it was part of a PwC publication, and it was an interview with the COO, Chief Operating Officer of NatWest Bank, UK bank, quite big, probably one of the big 3 or 4.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's only like 50 years old, so it's not like super, super old like some of the old banks, but it does own like Coutts, which is like a, you know, where the royal family bank, and there was a big palaver about that recently. But anyway, so just to give you a bit of context, 2007. What you call it? What have you got? What's that fancy word you use for the financial crash? You go the IF9 or something.
The GFC, the Global Financial Crisis. I think that's just what it's called now, to be honest. But...
Such a loser, GFC. So during the GFC, they almost went under, and the UK government bailed them out by $45 billion, which they've just recently got back. NatWest has just paid it back. Well, do you know what? If I borrow, we've got a mortgage with NatWest.
Yeah.
And can you imagine
it's not bad,
that. Yeah. What's not bad?
But the time it took them to pay that back, 15 years? 17 years?
Yeah, 17 years, yeah. Just kind of took the wind out of my sails there. That's about what I was going to say. Anyway, going back to this interview.
Put it back in.
Thank you very much. I'm resailed. So this person that was being interviewed was a lady called Jen Tippin. I love the names on here.
That's a nice name.
It is, isn't it? Jen Tippin.
I prefer Jenny Tippin.
Jenny Tippin. Oh, that sounds lovely. Jen.
Nice, Jen.
Yeah, it sounds like it should be in like Postman Pat or something. Now we're going to Jen Tippin, who owns the local sweet shop. And this is what she's been doing. Right, so originally what they were doing was they were like the normal banks. They didn't really listen to employees. They just basically went, right, this is what's happening. Here's the changes. They started a couple of years ago to realizing that actually they have what they call customer journeys. So they've got customer goals and journeys mapped out really, really clearly. So they know that if a customer gets a credit card or joins them, then ultimately the goal is to get them to have a credit card, a mortgage, or whatever. And so they map out the journey in like intricate stages with ideas of what happens on each one. Some bright person, probably our Jen Tippin, said, why don't we do the same for our employees? So they did.
Oh, crazy talk.
So basically what they have...
People have started to focus on the employee experience.
Well, what they've started to do is they'll have now a journey which is starts off where someone sees a job ad and ends up with them being 6 months in and a happy employee. So they've passed their probation. So that's the entire journey. And of course, they've got mini goals throughout it. And they've built this entire thing up so they can actually monitor where people are up to. And more importantly, have sort of little mini interventions. So at one point, they're 2 weeks in and perhaps a little bit like disillusioned. This wasn't the job they thought they were going to be. Then there's like a pulse check or a manager check-in going, how are you finding it, John? Are you enjoying it? And they're going, no, I think you're a set of ruthless capitalistic bastards. So,
all right, John.
John's very, very left wing. To be honest, I don't know why John applied in the first place.
No, it was a bad fit, John.
It was, but
it's
it should have been.
What happens when you feel pressured? You just take the next job that comes along.
But then John should have been filtered out perhaps earlier in the customer journey.
Yeah.
So that was the first thing they did. The second thing they did was you talked about this just a few seconds ago, they've now got what they call a failure-free workplace. They've redefined what failure means. It just doesn't exist. So what I've got down here is they've trained their top 170 leaders to see every experiment as valuable data regardless of the outcome. This is what Jen says, this created psychological safety where teams felt empowered to try new approaches without fear, and the culture shift encouraged innovation because people weren't afraid of getting things wrong. People just treat them as experiments now. And they learn from each other's success, and they're like, they won't boast, but they'll basically go, yeah, we did an experiment. Didn't work at all, but do you know what's weird? We found out that John is not a great fit. Imagine John's experiment. He's like, I just wonder if I can unplug the server and take down this entire establishment. So that's the number 2. Any thoughts so far, Lee?
No, our save said thoughts.
Okay.
Carry on.
Cool. So, and then number 3 they did out of 5, they gave their team nearly 500,000 hours back. So basically they did what they call process simplification and smart automation. They returned 385,000 hours to employees in 2024, and they're on track to give them back 820,000 hours in 2025. That's like giving every one of their employees an extra week of time. Now, this is not time off. This is just of time at work. Number 4, the courage to kill your own ideas. This is a big one. What used to happen was they go, right, we're going to roll out a lot of change, and then, do you like it? I don't care. John's not going to like it, but everyone else doesn't like it. Instead, what they've done now is they have 6,000 of their 60,000 employees are part of like kind of almost like a council where they can just say, this is what we're planning on doing. And they had huge changes planned, and the 6,000 people said, no, I don't think we're going to like that. It's too overwhelming, all this change. So they rolled it back and said, right, we're doing it in phases. Jen says, and I quote, We've even shelved ideas when they've not met the reality of what our colleagues really care about. And that's great because we're listening and experimenting before rolling out the change and investing too much of our time. Lee, thoughts so far?
I'm loving the giving value-add time back.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that work really, really well in organisations, both in terms of providing a more manageable workload and also allowing people the time to focus on more value-add activities like innovation, research, blah, blah, blah. And I think that's the biggest thing when I speak to a business owner and I say, unsurprisingly, John, the workload has come back as a bit too high in your organisation. And they're like, yeah, but what do you want me to do about that? I'm like, I understand, but what I want you to do about it is how can you find efficiencies, automations, like you say, it's those administrative tasks that are just annoying. And particularly now, there's no excuse. Look at AI. No. There's loads that you can do. So I love that, very much appreciate that. I'm very impressed with the level of consultation they're going through with employees. I think that's a fine balance because you don't want to put everything out to a committee because that will kind of, stall some progress potentially. So I think that needs to come with kind of guidelines of what those things are. Very interested in how this is all going to shake out in a very heavily regulated industry in terms of making mistakes and fails. And I'm sure there's some very clear boundaries around that. So they're not breaking any rules.
Yeah, she did actually say, and I've not got the full article in front of me, but you can go to the show notes, click on it, and you can read it. At one point, she said, we started off by putting in a load of guardrails. And I'm guessing, that sounded to me like really boring talk, but now you've said it, I'm guessing that was to ensure that the experiments didn't bring down, probably John wants this to happen, but didn't bring down the UK financial institutions.
Yeah, no, I applaud it. Interested to see how it'll work out. Be very interested to see what employees would say about it. But from what you said, it sounds pretty cool, and I'm fairly impressed, NatWest.
I'm glad you said that because I haven't told you this, but I'm going to try and get Jen.
Really?
On the pod. So,
we like Jen.
Yeah, I was hoping that you wouldn't go, well, she's made a right mess of this. And I'd be like, oh, no.
Awkward.
Yes.
No, I think Jen's got some cool ideas.
So if you're listening to this, Jen, we want you. Okay, my love, what have you seen this week?
I've seen some research, and you know how I like my research, Al.
You love a bit of research. Yeah, honestly, when Leanne goes to bed, she'll just sit there and read research. You can imagine her with a little nightcap, little half-moon glasses, and like a big journal in front of her. It'll be something called like the Journal of Psychological Safety Practices in the UK. That's
yeah. Yes, this is
Moving
exactly
on.
what I do. It's exactly what I do. So if, like John, you feel like you're in a dead-end job, that was a completely unintentional segue. We didn't make up John until like 3 minutes ago.
I didn't know John existed until I started saying his name and started giving his attributes.
No. So anyway, this was research that suggested that people who are hitting a career plateau are more likely to slack off, bend the rules, and even mistreat others at work. Not because they're lazy or mean, because being stuck changes how they see themselves.
I'm liking the way you say plateau. I like it.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of people who are in jobs at the minute that they're not particularly happy with, particularly given the current climate. And I understand it. You feel lucky enough to have a job and have that wage coming in when you're seeing these thousands and thousands of redundancies happen. Equally, maybe you need to be mindful that this might have a detrimental impact on your professional reputation, but also potentially your own psychology, your own identity, your own opinion of yourself. And that's important. So this research, anyway, was quite good. Decent sample as well, 450 employees. They looked at how career plateau, so that feeling, if you're not sure what I mean by that, the feeling that you stopped advancing, stopped growing, you're just a bit stagnant, languishing, I think it's been called as well. So they looked at career plateau and how it affects behaviour at work. So they tracked 3 different types of what they define as bad behaviour. Withdrawal, so disengaging, skipping meetings, putting in minimal effort. Deviance, breaking rules or behaving unethically.
Sorry, I thought you said deviance as in like you're a bit of a deviant, and you're a sexual deviant. Deviance, I'm sorry.
Deviance.
Sorry, carry on.
Yeah. Incivility, being rude, dismissive or disrespectful. And then they also measured employees' self-control and ego depletion, which is the sense of having no psychological resources left to manage stress or resist impulses. It's quite interesting, isn't it? Like how these behaviours show up, and particularly in this lens. Anyway, these are some of the results that stood out and I thought were really interesting. So feeling stuck did trigger bad behaviour. So employees who felt they were in dead-end jobs were more likely to act out, not in dramatic ways, but in everyday disagreement, passive aggression, and bending the norms. And I think that's very typical as well in terms of that kind of rust out burnout, isn't it? That disengagement from work when you're not feeling it. Ego depletion, explained why. So the link wasn't just emotional. Feeling plateaued drained people's mental energy and left them less capable to regulate their own behaviour, which makes sense. They did find that self-control buffered the effect, so employees with higher baseline self-control were less affected, but still felt stuck. They were able, though, however, to resist those more negative impulses and behaviours. And also what I thought was really interesting is that the behaviour was reactive, not premeditated. So it's not like you're sitting there. And I think there's always the argument of quiet quitting, wasn't it? Like I'm making an intentional, choice to not do anything. And I don't think for the majority of people that is necessarily the case. I think it's more that it's people just running out of fuel. They're running out of cares. I don't stop myself, but yes. So it's not really a rebellion. People are just kind of like, meh. But I think the key thing in that as an individual is recognising that if you are starting to lash out and enact these bad behaviours, it could actually start to really impact your reputation at work and just how you feel about yourself. You don't want to be an arsehole, do you? You don't. Nobody wants to be. Few people want to be. And in terms of an organisation, why does this matter? I think this is a real key sign that rather than kind of seeing people who are showing these signs of maybe quiet quitting or elements of incivility, is maybe thinking, am I pushing them enough? Am I challenging them enough? Are they in the right role? Is the things I could do around what we call job crafting to enrich that role and give them more meaningful work? I think there's things we can do as leaders to fix it rather than go, oh, well, if you don't want to give 110% to my organisation, like the BrewDog fella, there's things that we can do that means you're not going to have the disruption and the cost of actually losing a member of staff. I thought it was interesting. Al, was it?
Yes, it was. In the end, it was. No, actually, it was. I think, to be fair, I think anyone who's been in the workforce for like 5 years plus will have felt plateauing at some point. And it's just like you say, it's demoralising because you wake up and you're like, what's the point?
Yeah.
Because I go in there, I do my job, and nothing happens. Like that famous Friends line. Chandler says, well, I don't go in there and do my get to work early, nothing's going to happen. It's like that, isn't it? So I think we're plateauing. Do you know what? This would be an interesting episode to do it on. We're happy to do it anonymously. If you're listening and you are plateauing, we're happy to do it anonymously. Or if you have experienced the past and you're willing to talk about it, the opposite of anonymously, which is anonymously, I'm guessing, then get in touch, because that would be an interesting episode to do in the autumn, I think. Yeah,
and I think that's where we're going to see a lot more movement actually in terms of people resigning. Well, we think we talked about, didn't we? It's kind of that August is the peak month in the UK.
I know the phrase, you call it temporal milestones, is that right? Landmarks.
Yeah, exactly.
Different to prawn tempura.
Yeah, so I think we're going to see the resignations in August and a lot of activity in terms of movement in the autumn. But you can stop this, business owners, if you're seeing people who are being a bit naggy, who aren't particularly happy, who aren't maybe giving everything, rather than just assume that they're the problem. Maybe think about how you could offer these type of stretch opportunities, or even just check in and see how they're doing. Is always just a nice start, isn't it? It doesn't need to escalate, is what I'm saying. Pick up on these behavioural cues, and you might actually, prevent people from leaving in the autumn.
Which is what I suppose you want to do, unless it's John, in which case you want to encourage John out the door as soon as you possibly can. Talking and getting out the door, we're going to have a very, very quick break. Then we're back with a hot take from a guy who I've only met him once, and I feel like he's my best mate. I really like him, Matt. Yeah, I really like Matt. So we're back with a hot take, and then we've also got the World Famous Weekly Workplace Surgery. We'll wrap up your questions to Leanne. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. It's time for our hot take, which, as you know, is where we bring a guest in to challenge the way we think about work. And today we are asking an important question. Are wellbeing leaders held to a higher standard than everyone else?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. And this is coming from Matt Smead, who is a business psychologist and 2 times named HR Influence Voice of the Year.
Yeah, apparently.
HR Influential Voice.
Yeah, I've been told something and I can't tell you.
No, you can't. I checked with Matt and we can't.
I can't tell you.
No. No,
there is something coming.
So Matt is obviously a very engaging person and a very influential person in the world of HR.
Or he pays a lot of bribes.
Indeed, all three things can be true.
Yes.
Matt is also the co-founder of Working Well Community. He works with organizations to design better, more evidence-based approaches to well-being. Hurrah! But today, he is calling out the perfectionism that is creeping into the field.
So Matt's here to ask what that pressure we're all putting on these leaders about well-being is actually doing to the profession, and whether it's time we allowed a little bit more trust and a lot more experimentation. Let's go meet Matt.
My name is Matt Smead. I am a business psychologist and I am the co-founder of the Working Well Community and 2 times HR's most influential thinker.
So hit me. What is your hot take?
My hot take is that well-being leaders, people who are responsible for well-being within organizations, hold themselves to too high a standard. Okay, so I'm going to unpick that a little bit. So I want to preface it all by saying that I am a huge advocate of things like evidence-based practice, and I don't want people out there doing a crap job and adding no value within their organization. So I'll just preface all this by saying that. And actually, we'll probably go on to this, but is there a risk that sometimes this whole space turns into the Wild West? Perhaps, and I think we should talk about that at some point. But if we talk about a lot of the well-being leaders that I meet and I come across, there's sometimes a feeling that they need to present a watertight, bulletproof business case, evidence base for every little thing that they do in a way that I don't see in other industries. You know, so for example, I go into organizations and they're constantly moaning about this new IT system that they've implemented. And you think to yourself, was a business case presented around that IT system? Did they consult with the employees before they did it? Did they properly talk it through as a board before they implemented it? Probably not. They probably just did it because it's IT and we need to keep up and it's a core part of the business. So therefore, we're just going to do it, right? Whereas if it's a well-being intervention, even something seemingly really, really small, it has to go through all these loops. They've got to fight for the budget. They've got to, and I almost wonder, I don't necessarily know what that means in terms of how we switch that, because I don't just want well-being spend being, being agreed at the drop of a hat. But I feel like there's a pressure for well-being leaders within organizations. So there's a desire for a legitimacy. So perhaps they overcompensate to be taken seriously. I see that. There's a scrutiny and skepticism on that area of work that I don't see in areas like sales or marketing or IT or whatever it may be. Wellbeing initiatives are seen as optional rather than core part. Maybe the fact that wellbeing professionals are so deeply passionate about their job means that they hold themselves to such a high standard. They're perfectionists almost.
I like that. I think most people would expect someone in your position to go, well, you need to really think it through. You can't do this. This is about people. Mm-hmm. You've got to be careful. But you're saying, no, people do overthink it. Have I got that right?
To a certain extent, yeah. Do you know the other thing that comes into my head, and this is an even hotter take, is it affected by the gender demographic of people who work in that industry, which is primarily female rather than male? And you'll have seen these studies that have come out, and I'm sure Leanne's talked to you about these, where, you look at how men and women apply for jobs, and women want to be able to tick like 80% of the things on the job description, whereas men, it's like 20%, I can do those 2 things, so I'll just apply for it. You never know, it'll be fine. And I do wonder sometimes whether you get a lot more females comparatively working in the world of well-being, but I'd also broaden it out to people functions, HR more broadly, and whether that contributes to them feeling that they need to, have ticked every single box, whereas in maybe a sales role, or as I say, IT, sounds like I'm having to go at IT, or operational roles, maybe you get a few more men who this is the right thing to do. Of course it is, and it's pure ego.
We're saying that we're potentially that people who are implementing it could have the potential to overthink it or need to provide a business case. So let's imagine it's a dream scenario. So you can pick the organization, IBM, someone we've heard of. Mm-hmm. You're going in to help them implement something decent around well-being. How much business case do you need to put together? How would you approach implementing something like that in a larger organization?
Well, so I think the dream case scenario for me would be that you're working with an organization that are already bought into this stuff, who already view well-being as not just a nice thing to have, but as a fundamental aspect of the way that the organization works. So therefore, absolutely, if you want to put a specific intervention into place, again, I'm a huge advocate actually of evidence-based practice and collecting data and fancy word, but participative design. So basically talking to employees so that they have a voice in what you're creating, not just sitting with the board or the exec team in a dark room and working out what people need. So I would do it in a very consultative, very participative way, from the bottom up if possible. I would collect the data. You'd think about piloting it, all that sort of stuff. But that's all in the context of the organization pretty much being bought into well-being being a good thing to do, full stop. This wouldn't be, it's not competitive. It's not, I need to reach a certain threshold where now I'm suddenly allowed to try something out. Because I sometimes worry that that's a risk with some of this stuff, that if we hold ourselves to too high a standard where we feel like everything needs to be perfect, does that lead to a lack of experimentation? Does that lack of, just trying something out to see if it works? I was recording a live stream the other day, and I was trying to use the analogy, which I'll try and butcher again today, of likening this to almost what I was looking at was the environmental movement, right? So how do we reduce climate change? And it's very interesting that obviously, well, I was about to say everyone believes that it's an issue. I'm not sure everybody believes it's an issue. It seems to be the majority of people think we need to do something about it. So that's a given. Now, what that thing is, we haven't necessarily worked out. So the example I was using was plastic bags. So in the UK, certainly we use far fewer plastic bags. You have to pay 5-10p for them, or 30p in Marks and Spencer's. And we're replacing those. And that seems to have been a really positive thing. That's something that seems to have created large-scale cultural change. People don't use plastic bags as much as they used to. Great. The other one that I used as an example, though, is plastic straws, moving to paper straws. Now, I don't know if you've used a paper straw, but they're absolutely useless. They're absolutely useless. And I get to the point where I'm like, that's just not the thing. That's not the thing. I don't think paper straws are going to save us from the next apocalypse rather than plastic straws. But back to my experimentation point, I think that it's good that we tried it. I think that it was good that we tried something like that. What then is interesting, and this is where the plastic straws analogy kind of falls down a little bit, is sometimes it's then difficult to roll it back. So can you imagine the UK government coming out and saying, right, we're banning paper straws now, we're bringing plastic back? Like, that would go down very, very poorly. So if you think of all this back to the organizational context, I want practitioners and organizations to be able to try stuff out without necessarily perfectly knowing the impact it's going to have on their workforce. To try it out, because you might find the next plastic bag, but if you find the next paper straws, maybe you need the flexibility again to kind of roll that back without that then being seen as a failure. Because that in itself, and this is where all the cycle comes in, is then held against the wellbeing professionals. Well, you brought that in, it didn't work, so therefore your job's useless. And it's like, well, no, why am I always constantly having to prove myself? And an IT system might be implemented, it might be a complete disaster. They don't abolish IT and say, right, we're not using computers now because that last IT system didn't work. They go, that wasn't the one. Let's find one that does work.
That was the awesome Matt Smead. I told you he was great. You can see now why he's the what is it? The voice of influential HR voice of the year.
Most important person in psychology ever.
Right.
I think was what he got. He got it twice. 2 years running.
2 years running.
Yeah. It's like the Nobel Peace Prize for the psychologists.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not offended at all that I haven't been even nominated, but whatever.
I've nominated you.
Did you?
No, I'm going to, though.
Right. Well, I'm not sure. No, anyway, it's not quite the same, is it? Do you know what? I really liked it. And I think what I really liked, and we talked about it a bit on this episode as well, actually, with the NatWest thing, is allowing time for that experimentation. I understand when things are pressured, it can be really hard to feel as a business owner that's an important thing to do. But really, that's where people feel creative, that typically work that gives us energy doesn't suck our energy away. And ultimately, there's going to be ideas that will change the organisation in terms of its operations or the products it offers or the customers it serves. Innovation is what keeps businesses moving forward. So I like that. And reminding ourselves that as scientists, we too can be creative.
Yeah, and also He makes a really good point about rolling out an IT system. And you go, well, you just roll it out. And if it doesn't work, you go back and you change bits and pieces. Whereas you need to have like this sort of 12-page business case for rolling out something to do with people. Well, I tell you, there's one function in most businesses where they deal with people and they don't they experiment every single day, and that's marketing. And so, like in marketing, you don't sit down and go, well, let's do a case. I'm going to do a business case for running this particular ad with this particular headline. All you do is you run the ad and you see if it works. Now, I'm not saying you'd necessarily do that with your people, but again, be more Jen from NatWest. Maybe say, look, this is what we're planning on rolling out. What are your thoughts? Because let's be honest, in terms of business case, if you're having to prove a solid business case with an ROI to some nerd who's got a calculator going, excuse me, how much will this cost? You're probably not going to make a huge amount of inroads in that organization anyway. But if you are worried about what the impact's going to be, well, just go and ask your people. Here we are. Here's our plan. This is what we're thinking of doing. What's good about this? What's bad about it? And if you've got psychological safety, then they'll come back to you and they will give you their opinion like they did in NatWest.
Yeah, and it's tough, isn't it? And I can understand. I understand why organisations think in that way. You know, being brutal, marketing is a revenue generating function. Wellbeing is a cost function.
Yeah.
In the most strict commercial terms, I think it actually is. It's a money saving function because you're keeping your people engaged, you're keeping them well, you're keeping them healthy, you're keeping them productive and performing at the highest level. That's really difficult to measure in a tangible way that a business owner or senior leader is going to buy into easily. So I can see why wellbeing practitioners there's a need to overcompensate a little bit in building that business case. And I think ultimately it comes down to leadership, as Matt said, doesn't it? You know, those organizations that are already bought into it, like NatWest, for example. So yeah, it's a really, really tricky one, But I think it ultimately comes down to there are some businesses in the world that see wellbeing as a nice to have, and there are other businesses in the world that see it as a fundamental part of their operations and their organizational success and performance. And I think maybe where we're wasting our energy as wellbeing practitioners is trying to convince the ones that just aren't that interested.
Well said, well said. If you want to go and follow Matt, which you should, jump onto LinkedIn. He's got it. He's the one with the yellow banner and the best profile picture in the world. You've got to go and look for him, SMEED. Go and look for Matt because he's got a great profile picture. And also go and look at, it is workingwell.community is his website. I think from what I understood, it's totally free. You join and you get loads of really good stuff. Now, we are launching something similar. I did mention that to Matt, so we're not copying him. But it sounds like, yeah, just go and join Working Well, and then we will launch our thing, join ours as well, and then you can tell us which one is better.
Yeah, Matt also has a podcast, but didn't copy us. You're allowed to do similar things.
There we go.
You can be competitors and colleagues at the same time.
The two can be possible.
Yeah. So I'll leave a link to Matt's podcast in the show notes as well.
Fabulous. It's time for my favourite time of the week, which is the world famous weekly workplace surgery, where I put your questions to Leanne. Leanne is a chartered occupational psychologist. She's an expert in work, the world of work, and I don't think we've ever had a letter that stumped you. There's a couple which have shocked you. I don't think we've ever had a letter. I'm so old. I remember back in the day, Saturday morning TV, and it was brilliant because you sit down and they'd have a big sack of letters. They'd pull them out and open them and go, this one is from John, who wants to grow up to be a banker. Okay, so question number 1, Leanne. Do investors care about culture? And if so, how do you prove it matters? Hi, Alan and Leanne. I'm preparing for our first round. Most of our focus has been on the usual SaaS metrics, MRR, monthly recurring revenue, churn, growth rate, all of that. But I keep coming back to our team. This is nice. This is nice so far. I hope it turns out nice. We've worked hard to build a place where people want to stay. Turnover's low, morale is good. Culture-wise, we're in a strong spot. It feels like a real asset, but I've no idea how to show that to investors in a way they'll actually value. Do investors really care about culture? And if they do, how are you meant to measure it in a way that resonates? So have I understood this, that basically he wants to put a number on his culture so he can go on the balance sheet? Yeah. Got it. Yeah. Lee, what are your thoughts?
Excellent question.
Yes, really good question.
And yes, you absolutely can prove in metrics what your culture is saying and doing. I think investors are getting increasingly interested in this. And I know when we have spoken to some investors through the podcast, they are absolutely interested in that type. I think it was Sarah Chen Spellings from $1 Billion Moves, who always looks at that when she's makes decisions around VC funding. I think, particularly in the current climate that we're in and the way the world of work is going, I think it is It is important. And also just from a risk perspective, if you're going to invest in a business and then 60, 70% of the team leaves, and that could be your IP, that could be what you paid for. There's all sorts of considerations. In terms of how you do it, there's a really useful scorecard that was developed in a book about wellbeing, actually. All this is crossed over. Culture, wellbeing, employee engagement, it's all crossed over. So it's Sheena Johnson, Kerry Cooper, and Ivan Robinson wrote this book on wellbeing. Love it. Really good, very practical. I would show you, but I don't have it with me. But it has a scorecard in there that breaks it down to basically 4 different areas that you can look at that will be give an indication of how healthy your culture is or how well it's working. So I can leave a link to the book in the show notes. But it's things like you look at business and financial indicators. That's the first category. So that's things like sickness rates, retention rates, the cost of having to use agency staff, the number of ill health retirements, stress-related referrals to occupational health, all that type of thing. Then you've got internal process indicators. So that's things like stress levels of work-life balance, and your stress risk assessments. That's either going to be your HSC risk assessment, management standards that you should be doing annually anyway as a UK business, or a more sophisticated employee engagement and wellbeing survey like mine will also give you all this data as well. So everything around kind of engagement, quality of management, leadership, all that stuff you can be able to show through metrics as well. And then also you can get quality indicators. So that's things like customer satisfaction levels. That's reflecting of, how good your staff are, service quality, the number of complaints. And then you also have things like engagement in training and development. So how many people have signed up for certain interventions or training, feedback from those things, the level of innovation that you have, if you have that what NatWest is doing in terms of that ideation time, how engaged people are with that, and what's been produced from that is a really good indicator as well. So they're the 4 main areas. And as you can see, there's lots of different metrics that you'll already actually be generating in your business or be able to put your hands on within your business that you can show to demonstrate how your culture is currently functioning and how it's impacting the business. The only one you might need to invest in is some kind of employee insights, which you can either do free with the HSE or with people like me.
Excellent answer, Lee. And that book, if anything's by Sir Kerry Cooper, then it's going to be good. Although he has written over 200 books. Where did he get the time? And fun fact, a little bit of link back, because his company, or his consultancy, Robertson Cooper, was where Matt used to work.
Yes.
So
yes.
Nice link
little
back.
Loop there. Yeah.
Very good.
I should say the lead writer on that book is actually Sheena Johnson, who was my lecturer at Manchester Business School.
Really?
Yeah, she's awesome.
Why is she not on the pod?
Oh, well, she will be.
There we go.
Yeah.
So I'll go after NatWest and you go after
Sheena.
Yeah, there's something about goodwill. Now, it's funny. Goodwill has been measured on balance sheets for quite a long time now. And it's basically, how likely, it's a little intangible. In fact, it's probably quite a lot intangible. But perhaps when that first came, people were a bit like, oh, I'm not sure about measuring goodwill. But actually now it's kind of a standard thing. That's what goes on your balance sheet. So just fast forward 5-10 years and you're going to have employee goodwill. There'll be probably a really fancy name for it. Maybe you should come up with it and it'll be known as the Elliott test or something.
Well, something like discretionary effort, extra role effort, as the Americans call it. Basically how willing somebody is to go the extra mile is a really good indicator of how engaged your staff is. And again, a good employee engagement survey like mine will measure such things.
Okay, on to question number 2, Lee. Should I tell my boss I'm burnt out, or should I just push through and hope it gets better? I've been in a leadership role for about 7 months, managing a team of 11 in a company of around 70. The first few months were intense, constant firefighting, fixing broken processes, trying to hold things together. Things are more stable now, but I'm running on empty. I'm showing up, I'm getting things done, but the spark has gone. My head's foggy, I can't switch off properly, and I'm starting to worry what this might be doing to me in the long term. Now, this isn't the first time either. I've ended up being the fixer in a few different roles, always stepping into chaos, and I think that finally it's all caught up with me. So do I open up to senior leadership about how I'm feeling, or keep pushing and hope I bounce back? Little PS here, I worry that being honest could change how I'm perceived, but staying silent feels risky too. Lee, this poor person.
Yeah, conundrum. I think at this point, without a significant change in the way that you're working, or the way that you're managing your life and work together, I don't think there's much of a scenario where you're just going to bounce back and this will be fine. It sounds like you're in early stages of burnout, and without some fairly significant changes, that typically continues to escalate. And I think what sounds absolutely sure is it isn't necessarily this organisation is to blame. It sounds like this has just been compounded over roll and roll and roll. If you're a fixer, if you work in transformation, and again, very common when you such levels of change and ambiguity, and the emotional load that comes with that as well, not just the actual workload, is exhausting. And it sounds like you're exhausted, which is one of the three main symptoms of burnout. The second being disengagement, which it sounds like you're also doing as well, in terms of kind of going through the motions and doing the bare minimum. In terms of whether you should tell your leaders, I really can't answer that confidently without knowing more about the organisation, the relationships you have with your leadership. I want to say, of course, yes, of course you should speak to your leaders. That should be the first people you go to understand what your options are, either in terms of taking some leave or reducing your work hours down or being put on a different project that isn't as transformative. That said, if your leaders aren't supportive in that way, then it could impact your reputation. It could impact your longevity in that organisation. I'm not saying it's right. It's not right. No, I'm not saying it's right and it's not okay. But yeah, there are sadly more bad leaders in the world than there are good ones, as we've heard over the last few weeks. So I would say prioritise yourself for the moment and what you can do within the boundaries of the organisation to start to rebuild some of that resilience. So I think in terms of the work that you're doing, is that stability going to continue? Is that what your predictable role is now going to be? Because that's good. And over time, you'll start to regain that energy back and start to want to invest it in your role again. Can you take some time off, whether it be some annual leave, whether it be a few long weekends, whatever it is? It sounds like you need to detach from work in a very literal way to allow some rest and recovery time. And I think finally it's looking at other things you can do to build your levels of individual resilience. So things like setting those clear boundaries between work and life, making sure you're investing time on things that we know build energy. So connections, your friends, your family, doing things outside of work, staying active is really helpful. Eating well is really helpful. Getting enough sleep is really helpful. All of those things that are going to help, so long as you're in a position where you can control your organizational environment to an extent where it's not as chaotic, it's not as change heavy. You've got the support of your team around you. You've got the support of your leadership in terms of the work that you're doing. There's no incivility there. It's not that this is a toxic work environment. It's just been a chaotic work environment. And now that busy level has returned to something more sustainable. You will know if you can trust your leaders. I appreciate it's only been 7 months, but I think you'll have a feeling. My feeling is for you to ask the question. You have some doubts, but maybe have a think if there's somebody you can speak to, whether it may be somebody in HR or another manager who maybe you don't directly report to, or even a colleague within the organisation around, what's the general, efforts around mental health and wellbeing here, and maybe get a sense for that. But I think I'd start by looking at what you can control, and then continue to reflect and explore leadership and how they might respond to this. And if you feel that if you're getting all those clues, that it'll be a positive conversation, then I would absolutely have it.
Yeah, good advice. And I think the two key questions is that what do I do, and do I tell my bosses? I think Leanne's explained exactly what you should do. And also go back and listen to so many of our episodes on burnout. We've got Sally Clark, was she on burnout? One recently about
Kate Donovan.
All of those. So yeah, go back and listen to those. Secondly, a little bit of a tip not a tip maybe, but what I would do in your situation is, because you're a manager, I would go to whoever you were going to go and speak to about this problem and say, hey, look, I just want a bit of guidance. No one said this, but if someone comes to me and says they're starting to feel a bit burnt out, they just don't feel themselves, basically describe your situation. What should I be saying to them? Should I be helping them? Should I be like, is this a performance management thing? And then you're going to sneakily find out, I think, how your boss and your boss's bosses think about this kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. It's that fact gathering, isn't it? Like getting that more information to understand the level of psychological safety that you have, the level of commitment the organisation has to well-being. That's a really good idea. I like that.
Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you. See, I once a year, I bring a really good idea.
Oh, it's more than that.
once a month,
Yeah.
less than that.
Yeah.
Okay, on to question number 3. I've been asked to gather peer feedback, but why would anyone open up to me? My managers asked me to speak to my teammates and gather feedback on our team culture and work environment, basically to act as a go-between. I'm not in HR, I'm not particularly close to anyone, and honestly, it already feels awkward. People seem confused about why I'm even doing it. Now, he says he's ruled out, I'm guessing this is the manager. He's ruled out an anonymous survey and wants it done quickly, but I don't think I'm the right person for it. Should I give it a go and hope for the best or push back on doing it at all? That's a tough one.
Yeah. So the manager has said he doesn't want to do an anonymous survey.
This person's got to go individually to the people and go, what's wrong with the culture? Can I write this down and put your name against it and take it back to my boss?
Oh, this is not the way to do it. This is not the way to do it. And nobody is going to be honest and give you any useful data. Equally, not your circus, not your monkeys, my friend. This is just all about appeasing your boss at this point, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'd be more tempted to kind of, have this conversation of like, probably with so is he the supervisor or just his teammates? Just his teammates?
Teammates, he describes them as in fact, it doesn't have to say, it doesn't have the gender. So my manager asked me to speak to my teammates.
I would be inclined to go to a teammate that you're closest to. I know you said you're not super close, but go to a teammate you're closest to and kind of go, look, this is what I've been asked to do. I don't think it's going to be particularly effective. And I don't, I probably don't feel safe myself giving very honest feedback in this type of public scenario, unless everyone actually loves the culture. The tone of it, I'm guessing there are some issues there.
Yeah, it seemed to be.
I'm not sure why this would be a question, a problem if everything was rosy. So kind of having that honest conversation with one of your colleagues and kind of going, this is what I'm thinking. We just kind of sit down together and do a bit of a SWOT analysis. Because I think a SWOT analysis is something that's fairly neutral and well known to managers, and can be put together in a way that you can provide some indications of what's happening and where things need to be fixed, but probably in a bit more of a commercial business process kind of way.
If you've not heard of SWOT analysis, it stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and it's like a matrix.
Yeah, so it could be things like, right, what do we think the strengths are of the organisation right now, or the team, or how we work together? And I see that a lot in surveys that I do, is that people really aren't getting on with senior leadership, but they found these little safe havens within their team where everything is really nice. It might be that you have that. What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? I would focus on process. I would focus on things that are very transactional rather than the leadership behaviour. I'm not saying this is going to be effective in any way. It won't be. But this is just about protecting yourself and appeasing your manager because he's just thrown you under the bus, essentially. So weaknesses, I would focus on very transactional, process-led things. Opportunities is maybe your opportunity to actually provide feedback that might be useful. So, for example, if the IT system you're working with is really annoying and clunky and causing you extra time, there could be an opportunity to upgrade your IT systems to better serve customers or to introduce a new product that people keep asking about. That could actually be the opportunity section, the chance where you actually can provide some feedback. And the threats as well is always useful. I think typically business owners are interested in that. If there's things that you've heard from competitors or things that are going on or things in the market. AI was an obvious one. It's both a threat and an opportunity. I'd maybe focus on that. So it sounds like your manager as well. It sounds like he's been asked to do this by a senior leader.
I was just going to say this. It sounds like he's been asked to do it. He doesn't really believe in it. Went, I'll just give it to someone. Yeah.
So I think you want to give your manager something back that's useful and will make him look fairly competent in front of his senior leaders. And actually, I think it'll be something that might be easy enough for you to put together with some of your colleagues. I think then it's also making it very clear that, this isn't something you felt entirely comfortable with. It's not within your wheelhouse, and you're more than happy to support with this type of thing again in the future, but you'd want to speak to somebody who does have some expertise around that, either in terms of HR or organizational psychology. I think it's fair to kind of go, I think if we're going to do this, I'm not the right person to do it. But, hopefully this time this provides you enough with what you need. But yeah, protect yourself.
Yeah, there's a couple of things. There was 3 things I thought of when you were talking. The first one was, which you mentioned before, is that this is a phone it in. The manager's not taking it very seriously. So don't stress too much because it's a box ticking exercise. They want to go back to their boss and go, yeah, I've done that. Secondly, if you do want to do it properly or as properly as you possibly can, go and find someone in the team who's like outgoing, who's like the team favorite. Everyone loves them. go to them and just say, can I borrow you for a minute? Look, I've been asked to do this. Everyone loves you. Whereas I'm like, I'm just like the wallflower. I sit at the back and don't really do anything. How would you approach this if you were given this task? And I bet they'll be like, look, I'll go and have a word with the guys. Don't worry. We'll do something. Still be careful about taking negative feedback, particularly if it's about the manager, because if they've just been asked to do it, the last thing they want is information about them. Or the third option is a little bit sneaky, but you could just go back to the manager without speaking to anyone and go, yeah, I've spoken to a few people and basically they want anonymous surveys. That's the feedback. And then you just go, right, we want anonymous survey. So then you go, no one will really talk to me. And they go, well, what did you say? Well, I said we're doing this and no one really talked to me. They want anonymous surveys. Oh, God, do I have to do anonymous surveys? And they'll go, well, luckily, I listened to a podcast episode the other day where Leanne does anonymous surveys. So, get in touch with her and buy that.
Or you can look at the HSE Management Standards Survey.
Or you can buy one from Leanne.
If he doesn't want to do an anonymous survey, doesn't mean that you couldn't.
Oh, good point.
It's all just lip service, really, isn't it? It's not going to provide any useful data at all, which is why I'm thinking the SWOT analysis might at least be something productive and useful. I don't think... anything around sentiment or employee attitudes is really what this manager is looking for or cares about. So if you're going to take the time to go through this exercise, and your colleagues are as well, I just think something like that might make it somewhat useful.
Yeah, totally agree. If you've got any questions you want to put to Leanne, then check out our show notes because there's links in there where you can submit your question. I believe that's the end of the episode. Join us next week for another This Week in Work on every Tuesday, as there will be, but there might not be soon because we're going to change things around for summer, but we'll talk about that in a second. Lee, what's going on Thursday?
We are joined again by another expert guest. This week, we are talking to someone who is leading a team of bona fide geniuses. Geniuses. And we're going to get a masterclass on how to recruit and manage people who are smarter than you. Not you, than one.
And maybe you. So,
no smarter than Al.
Smarter than me, yeah. Okay, well, thanks very much. If you've enjoyed this, then leave a review, please, because that really helps us. Also, if you haven't enjoyed this, then send us an email and tell us why you didn't enjoy it, because we do want to make it better. If you just genuinely don't like British people with stupid sense of humour, then this probably isn't.
I'm not sure you got this far.
No, I don't think you would.
No.
Be interesting, though. Interesting. Anyway, we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Whoever said they've ditched top-down performative, don't know what that means. I've just made that word up.
The award-winning podcast where behavioural science meets workplace.
And today's is all about leaders and specifically don't know what I'm talking about. It's to gather peer feedback, but why would anyone open up to me? I made a mess of that.